and said what could be done with it, but really we have a community that has, I think, a whopping 18 acres of open space in town, maybe less, and it's just inadequate. So we certainly don't want to give up any open space that remains. So the development opportunities that we have are really extremely limited.
So I guess the question is, if the pie remains the same but it comes from somewhere else, I mean, is there any way to reallocate the money that goes to the schools?
That's the domain of the schools, obviously, and as you probably know, maybe as new residents, we are constrained by a 2% tax levy cap. So we're constrained in what we can raise. Over 80% of our budget is salaries and benefits, which, as you know, is achieved by negotiated settlement. We work hard to keep our settlements under control. You know, when 80% of your budget is salaries and benefits, you don't have a lot of discretionary spending. We do not have a lot of drills, which is why we are having a referendum so we can fix our boilers and other important things that need work. We don't have a large administrative structure, even compared to similar districts like, say, Verona. We have fewer administrators than districts of comparable size. So we try to keep our administrative line under control. The biggest obstacle to cost containment, the biggest challenge for us, is costs that are out of our control. Power. Now we buy our power, we buy our energy cooperatively to deal with that. We buy most things cooperatively. We enter into cooperative arrangements with other districts to help share costs. Special education costs are not entirely under our control. So that is an area where they vary considerably year to year. So in terms of our ability to control our spending, yes, we work on that every single year at budget time. But we are very constrained by the way the budget is constructed.
Okay.
Well, one thing I'd like to add, Dan Murphy here. We have, Board of Education has unfunded state mandated programs that we have to be responsible for. And our taxes went up significantly before you moved in because of the state rolling back on their contribution to levy. So subsequently, you know, if you're looking, we're doing the best we can as a borough. We really need more money from the state. We're not getting our fair share, in my opinion, from the state to help us with our education system.
If I could just also add one thing to that. When we talk about lowering the tax burden, because so much of what the town spends on both the school side and the town administration is for salaries and benefits, that directly constrains how many people we can employ and what terms we can give. I would say already, we're offering a kind of a trade-off, for example, where in our police force, our police force is pretty young as a direct result of what we can pay them. We've had very good results, but we want to have a certain level of coverage around the clock. There's just a minimal amount of patrol cars and patrol officers that you want to have. And if you stress that too much, the quality is going to deteriorate.
I think I would rather have the money go to the teachers than the cops, personally.
Well, I mean, look, I think what David's trying to say
I appreciate what you're saying.
I think what David's trying to say is, we're trying to provide service, and service is provided by people, okay? And we have to pay those people, and there's a direct connection between how much service we can provide and how many people we have. Okay, so we did try, and we did reduce in 2009 the table of organization of our police department because we simply couldn't afford to maintain the same level of service. We were faced with a tremendous number of tax appeals. We lost every one because the value of the homes had dropped significantly. Now the good news is it rebounded more quickly than pretty much every other community in New Jersey, and it fell less than most every other community in New Jersey. That was the good news because we live in a desirable community. But the reality is we had fewer dollars, so we did cut the number of people in our police force. And the first guy that went was the police officer who was in the schools all the time. And, you know, that is a very important person, because we can't control town with fewer than 3 people at night. You have to have one in the north end, one in the south end, and you have to have a superior officer. That's 3 people. But you have to have four units of 3, because they run around the clock, they run 12 hours. So really, as Betsy said, you know, we're very, very constrained about how much money we have, and we're trying to do more service and maintain high quality service with fewer dollars every year, and that's the reality that we deal with.
And if I might add about the police protect the schools, and as you recall, we all suffered along with the town of Sandy Hook in 2012 when they had that tremendous massacre. And we worked very closely with the Glen police. We owe them a great debt for helping us to implement a very solid and very cost-effective plan to try to keep our students as safe as we possibly can. It is a huge concern. It seems like every week in the news we read about shootings, and many of them take place in schools. It is a constant concern of all of us and everyone in this room. So even with their diminished forces, the police, by being creative and intelligent and working cooperatively, help keep our students safe. So it doesn't lower your taxes, but it ultimately makes the investment very cost-effective and purposeful.
Let me reiterate my thanks to all of you, and thank you for your answers.
You have a question?
No, I actually didn't have a question.
Okay.
So I wanted to make a comment. I've been in town for 28 years, and I actually have watched the state funding to this system dwindle to naught. One of the things, it's very easy for one to sort of, you know, expound about what one thinks, but I think one needs to understand the history of what has happened in town. And since I've been here, one of the key elements that we face is the sort of blooming or booming amount of kids in the system. Glen actually has very limited space. And as you know, Central, that building where West London is, used to be a school. We had all sorts of things. Imagine if we didn't have Forest and Linden, which was something that was considered years ago to do. You really need to sort of step back, because the town, as far as I know, and since being here, has been doing a remarkable, including the Board of Ed. Not only that, you've got the alternative funding, you've got the educational foundation, which helps to supplement what Trenton no longer gives to us. So while maybe from where you came, New York, you have all this stuff, Glenridge is just this tiny little bubble that really doesn't have anything other than its residents. We don't have, as you heard the town say, and I don't mean to take over and repeat, but I mean, it really, I've been here for 28 years. My children have been out of the system, like Peter's kids, for some time, but I've stayed. One, because I like the town. It's where I've lived since I've been here, actually, in this bloody country. But the bottom line is that Glenridge is something that you can't really find a lot. And I actually, for one, would not necessarily say what we pay for policemen should go to the teachers. We're giving, based on the pro rata share, what needs to be done. And you need protection in the town. And we've got a variety of people here, people with kids, but we all work together to support the school system. And so we can't lash out one group for another. The key is to work together, come together and come up with solutions. I will tell you, I've been here since Betsy, and I've told Betsy she can't get off the board because she has been one of the people who championed going to Trenton to try and get us the aid that we need. Now, what we really need is to get the apathy out of people and get people acting to help support the board and Betsy and the others who work to try and get the monies back. But we can't fight Trenton. Sorry.
Here.
Can I grab you for 2 seconds?
Sure.
Sorry. I know the affordable housing thing is a real hot issue. You may already know this, so forgive me, but I work in affordable housing at Bank of America. And I know that one alternative I had heard a lot of chatter about the affordable housing bringing in more kids that would then stress the school system. An alternative to that would be senior housing. I don't know if you may already know that, but that's another option. I don't know what your constraints are by what developer would come in to produce the housing that is needed, but a senior housing facility would qualify as low-income housing, thus affordable housing, and would meet whatever need would be required for the, because it's all based on
Right.
banks and AMI and, and all of this.
So,
So I don't know if that was an option.
what's happened is the developer has come into town, bought up some properties, and has filed suit against the town. So that's where we're at.
I see.
And I would say just in general terms that my personal view is that a community such as ours needs to have different types of housing options. And I fully support senior housing. It's something that I feel that we need, as I get older.
Right.
And
maybe not you.
And my kids are out of school and have been for quite some time. I'm beginning to think, hey, down the road, I'd like to stay in the town, but I'm not sure I want to stay in a bigger house.
Sure.
So, but I think that young people moving in,
I'd like a place for my mom that would be local. That would be amazing.
So you're making my point. So
Right.
What if
look,
seniors start
so-
having kids?
Sorry?
What if seniors start having kids?
So
That's just
but look, I'm not
We're at the mercy of the
anti-development per se, because I think that a community has to continue to evolve and grow,
Sure.
and I think that needs change. And but I do think we'd like to be in control rather than have it shoved down our throat.
Yeah, no,
which is
I-
kind of what we're facing right now.
I didn't realize about the developer. I didn't
Yeah, I'm
realize.
sorry. I have to run. I have to catch an airplane.
Thank you, Peter.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Tony, do you have a question?
It was a simple, generic question for everyone. I'm just trying to understand, there's people in the community that have issues, they're not urgent and compelling. How do their issues get on the agenda for both the council and how do they get involved in the committee? So as I understand, there's many committees. So it's kind of a functional question, anyone who wishes to answer.
Well, for agenda items, you can call the board office, you can talk to our superintendent, Dirk Phillips. As I said, our administrative structure is rather small. Or you can email any member of the board. Our email is on our glenridge.org website. You just push the Board of Ed tab. It takes you to the roster. You can email any of us or all of us if you want.
The
So
website, interactive.
that you can take, that takes care of the agenda question. In terms of the committees that Teresa and the three of us talked about, those are standing committees of the board, so they have board members on them. But our board meetings are open, so if you want to come to any of them, you can. And there's public comment times twice in every board meeting, so you can say whatever you have on your mind to us, and we will respond if we can right away. If not, we'll get back to you. And also our board meetings are uploaded to YouTube, so we're not as good as the SNL, parodies of elections and whatnot. But if you don't have a chance to get to the board meetings, you can watch us on YouTube as well. So there's lots of opportunity to get involved.
Just to embellish on that, or from the standpoint of the town council, it's very similar to what Betsy is talking about. So how things are getting on the agenda. In an everyday sense, a lot of stuff sort of bubbles up from the town administration, bringing up issues that need the action or the approval of the council. Some comes from residents who come to the meeting or write, and some is of a recurring nature, things like budgeting and things that. Sorry?
The rooster.
So the rooster was interesting because that was sort of the combination of all of those, right? So among other things, the rooster disrupted a council meeting. So we were very aware of that. And I'm told, although I have not spent very much time in Glen Ridge Municipal Court, that the rooster prompted the judge to comment that any defendant who testified while the rooster was crowing must be guilty. That's tradition. So it was something that we were directly aware of because of the neighbor who has roosters, and also, you know, the town administration had been made aware of potential problems, and a neighbor of one of the roosters has complained and actually brought the photos of well, not the chickens, you know, scratching about on their lawn. So it came from complaining neighbors, it came from the administration, it came from our own experience. We did research into other model ordinances from other towns. We brought one out. The poultry community pushed back.
Is that the Purdue defense?
We ruffled some feathers.
While you're ahead.
And so there were a number of you know, livestock owners who came to a meeting, which I'm sorry to say I couldn't attend the meeting. It was actually the night of Yom Kippur, but I was surprised to find out that somebody that lives 2 doors down the street from me was one of the chicken owners. So evidently they're not all that disruptive. I wasn't aware. So in that one instance, unusually, I have to say, we had resident input and administrative input. One of the issues I find, which I think maybe distinguishes the town council from the Board of Education, I think on a day-to-day basis, there's a lot more complacency in town about what we do than what the board does. Maybe because, you know, the children are affected, and people get much more, you know, passionate about the things that affect their children. But I find, you know, I personally welcome it if someone shows up at the town council irate and wants to.
Here.
Because, right? Because most of the time, honestly, we work alone. And, you know, we're just talking to ourselves in a, you know, and there's 50 seats and they're mostly empty. So if anything, I would like to see more town involvement, more, you know, irate neighbors showing up and just giving feedback, because if this experience has taught me anything, it's that the political system and democracy is it's not a spectator sport; it's a participatory endeavor. And it's not something where you can just sort of sit back and say, well, you know, you can't fight City Hall, or this in Glen Ridge, you know, it's all of us. And so, regardless of who's in office, everyone needs to be involved.
It's an interesting point, everybody involved. I just realized for the first time that, not that we have 4 people running for 3 positions, but because of that, is there a reason that another board member can't be added? Is there some absolute power that has said that we can't make the board? I mean, what was mentioned by Sandra was exactly that in all the years, and I'm here 38 years, 10 years even longer. So when I first moved here, they had graduating classes of 75. Some people may remember that. And so my question is, it's changed, it's evolved, it's grown. Why can't the board grow necessarily? Why does the burden have to be placed on X amount of people if somebody else is qualified to add to the board and maybe make it better and somewhat maybe spread the wealth, spread the, you know, the job that needs to be accomplished?
I think that is governed by regs in the state of New Jersey. Now, there are towns, for example, West Orange, our neighbors, who have a much bigger district. They have a 5-member board. So boards can be 5, sometimes 7, and frequently 9. And it seems to be governed by.
Are any of those paid positions in other towns? I mean, here they're volunteers.
In some bigger places, there is.
Only because the fact is that they are.
Totally.
You are volunteering to do this
I
job.
like where you're going with this line of questioning.
Yes. So it is.
Fat
It's
chance.
governed by regs, so you have some flexibility, and what most people don't know, in addition to being able to have 5-member boards, or 7-member boards, or 9-member boards, most boards in New Jersey are elected, but some are appointed, like in Montclair. They're appointed by the town council. So to answer your question, we love having people involved with us, but we've hit the max as far as what the law allows for the size of a board.
When you say the law,
The
which law?
state regs.
So,
DOA
but
regs.
some are 5, some are 7, some are 9. So
Right.
what determines that?
Mostly, no, not size, because West
Size of the
Orange is
school
much bigger,
system,
has a
or-
5-member board. It's usually tradition in a town, you know, they,
But traditions are meant to give you some level of maybe consistency, but,
Right,
but
but-
we're in an evolving time. I
we're in
mean,
evolving times. I mean, we could, if we felt like it, go down to a 7-member board, but we've never seen the sense of that.
Yeah.
Montclair a few years ago, tried to decide they wanted to, try the idea of having an elected board instead of an appointed board. And so they put it to a vote, and it was voted down. So a lot, in New Jersey, we have regulations that we have to abide by, which gives us either 5, 7, or 9-member board. And then towns have traditions which govern whether they have a 5, 7, or 9-member board.
I love traditions, but I just wanted to have a
Sure.
thoughtful discussion, because it seemed that everything I'm hearing is, okay, the town, we know, especially those of us who've been here for decades, know how it has changed and grown for the better. And in turn, I thought that might be something that could be considered.
Well, I mean, certainly, if it was allowed, then it's certainly something that we would.
I mean, if everybody was paid, the discussion would be, how do we pay for it? But that's not the case.
No, but I mean, obviously having more people and having more diverse board is always something.
I mean, get enough chairs.
Yeah, we have enough chairs.
Good.
We have like 2
You
have to worry.
I just want to be sure these things are covered.
They're cheap plastic chairs, but
Yeah,
we have
plenty
plenty.
comfortable. And, so Roosevelt tried to pack the court of the Supreme Court in the 1930s, so we have to worry about the ongoing ramifications because this stuff politically. But,
Well, you are a lawyer,
But
aren't you?
I don't hate the idea. I mean, we all do a lot of work on the court.
So you're saying this can be considered or it can't?
Well, we would have to seek, I think, either regulatory session or a change. I'll look it up and let you know.
You do.
I just wanted to kind of touch on that. What about an intern? No, I'm just kidding. But
How about somebody retired?
when people come, I'm guessing when people come to these meetings you guys have, and
Yeah.
they passionately or not so passionately, but usually passionately say what they believe in and want. That definitely has some kind of it helps you guys make a decision, right?
Oh,
I mean, so
absolutely.
essentially everybody can be part of the board then, right?
It's the best thing. When people come and talk to us, it's the best thing. Peter Harrigal is standing there. He comes to our meetings frequently and talks to us about things. It is excellent. It is cross-fertilization. It brings us new ideas. And sometimes we frequently learn more from people who disagree with whatever it is we're talking about than the people who agree with us. So anybody can come, as long as they, don't throw things, it's fine, and that makes, you're right, it makes everybody better.
And it doesn't just happen.
And they usually last with seats.
There were plenty of seats.
Yeah, we
But,
did.
it happens not just at board meetings, but, on the train, on the platform, in my house, I mean, it happens we hear a lot, and it's extremely helpful. I mean, we have our own experiences, we have our own, day jobs, we have our own kids who have their own issues, but, hearing about other issues from, is extremely important. I mean, that's how we learn, so we know how to do what we do.
And Glenridgers are not shy, in
No.
my experience.
Definitely
And some days, you know, you think, maybe I should stay in my house today. They're not shy, so everybody is part of the process.
Yeah, home and school, I know, is quite cool. That's great.
I have two, well, maybe more than two, but the initial question, I don't know enough about the CCC, but obviously you guys have endorsed 3 of the 4 candidates. What goes into your calculus of determining who we're going to endorse, and why did you endorse the people that you endorsed?
As I briefly alluded to at the beginning of the session, the purpose of the CCC is to keep parties from basically entering leverage and making the determination as to who those candidates are. And as you can see, we never have had, Democrat or Republican. The method the CCC has used is a series of interviews and then group discussion to come up with our endorsed candidates, and that the number of endorsed candidates meets the number of open slots on the board or the council on any given year. Essentially, the guiding light that members of the CCC have been asked to follow is to pick the best candidate for the town. What that means to each individual CCC member is different. Therefore, diversity on the CCC, I think, is important towards reaching our goal. Obviously, more voices, the better. But once we've made our determination, traditionally, those candidates have one more than they lost. It's an odd system. I don't know of any other towns that have a similar one, but it is the way that we've done it since 1913.
And so other than saying that we think these are the best candidates, whatever that means for the town, you don't really say why you endorse them?
I mean, we can speak to their individual strengths, but the actual content of our deliberations is secret.
And how many people are on that sort of nominating committee?
It fluctuates depending on our membership. Our membership is all part of those discussions. So were we to be 10, it would be a deliberation of 10.
What was it this year?
This past year is about 20.
So, just because I work with balance, the way it's done is we have candidates, and then based on how many members we have, we segment our group out, and then we do home interviews. So any candidate speaks to, in this year, 3 to 4 CCC members, and then those people are brought, those interviews, all that information is brought back to our meeting. And this year we spent quite a few hours debating what we felt, and so the people that speak to a particular candidate are the ones that interview them and or know them from past experience.
And anybody can join the CCC, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
But actually, I'll tell you that years ago, the CCC had about 60 members, frankly, because every organisation in town could delegate members to the CCC. The Women's Club, the Home and School. Then we had several years ago, there was a little bit of an upstart in town, actually, and he then called the Home and School to reconsider having members on the CCC. But the CCC actually was a vibrant organisation, and I, for one, who is an independent, because I don't want to belong to any party, frankly love the idea, because it's a matter of getting a diverse group of people, getting together, vetting people. You go out and you interview your candidate, and you come in and you make your case for that individual, and then the body, it's a consensus. It's not a dictatorship by any means, because that wouldn't really work, but it's really a consensus of the entire group after hearing every team present their candidate. And then the decision is made of the people before us, these are the top 3, and that, or whatever the positions are, 2 or 3, and that's really how it's worked. And so every single one of you have a fiduciary responsibility as a member of Glen, citizen of Glenridge or resident of Glenridge, to become involved. And it's really, to me, absolutely abhorrent when people stand on the sidelines and sit behind and love to basically complain, but they're not part of the solution. It's really a shame, isn't it? Because it's really all about us.
So to add into what she said, one of the things the CCC does is we go to all of these groups the women's club, all the municipal groups, and try to get a representative from each one of those groups, because in our opinion and in the CCC credo, they belong on the CCC. All of these different factions belong on the CCC. It's not a particular type of person. You don't even need to be in any of those groups. You can just walk in. Michael's a perfect example of it.
Well, I understand that, but I think there's you can get involved obviously in the community without necessarily being on the CCC and
Correct.
and do
Correct.
your own due diligence and
Correct.
without sort of relying, and that's why I was trying to find out what goes on behind the curtain, that you have this endorsement, but a lot of people, at least I, don't exactly know what you consider when you're making that decision. And in some ways, you're making that decision for me. I think I might be able to make my own educated decision.
We consider anything that people bring up. I think it's
keep
just
in mind
a
that-
group that does homework.
Yeah.
Or.
I know that everybody,
I think it's sort of
also.
valuable function, you can take it or leave it
Right.
as far as the endorsement, but I think that having a group to do the homework and look a little bit deeper is better than the majority of voters that simply rely on the slogans, maybe flyers, or just.
Right,
random
well, let me just
messages.
add one other thing, and the other thing is, non-endorsed candidates are not blocked
Right.
by the CCC. We do not discourage. We just do, as you said, our due diligence, come up with our best
But you
estimate of.
don't get your information on the flyer that you guys hand out.
Not on the CCC flyer.
Right. Right, and then I have a second sort
To
of
your point,
substantive
though,
question.
just to your point though, just to follow up on Anthony, and then, this is not a good discussion,
No, I know.
essentially.